Thanks so much for joining us today. Before we get into our episode, why don't you take a couple of minutes to subscribe to my Substack? You can subscribe using the link on your screen so that you can get newsletter updates sent straight to your inbox every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, whenever it is I decide to start doing that. We are still not ready to resume that, but once we do, it'll be great to have it straight in your inbox. It's a great way to stay in touch with the show. Another great way to stay in touch with the show is to follow us on Instagram at The Ishan S Show. I like to post clips from the show on Instagram. It's a great way to also stay in touch with the show, and you can stay in touch with me on social media. On Instagram, you can follow me at Real Ishan Shrivastava, and you can find me on Blue Sky at ishanshrivastava.bluesky.social. So before we get into our episode again, we have a really great interview with candidate for Illinois State House, Maria Peterson, right after this. So you don't want to miss that. We had a great conversation about a lot of things. And Maria is actually a returning guest. We had her on a few years ago back when she ran for state senate. So we had a great conversation then, and I think we had a great conversation this time around. So you don't want to miss that. You can tune in right after this. So let's start with this. Republican lawmakers lie. There's nothing new about that. I mean, I've been doing this for 4 years. Like, I know, I've covered it enough. I know it like the back of my hand. Like, that is not the craziest statement. We see it quite often, and we've seen it over the years. Republican leaders lie, and they do it. They lie to their own people. They lie to the country, and some of the things that they do. Donald Trump literally built a presidential career on this whole thing. The Washington Post tracked tens of thousands of lies that he told during his first term. So that's not new. What is new is the latest thing that is being lied about. And there's a few things that we could be talking about. Let's talk about the big ugly bill. I don't think that's been on anyone's mind lately, and we'll talk about why that is in just a second. But the big ugly bill is something we should all be talking about, we should all be thinking about, and something that we should all be concerned about. Because like we've covered in previous episodes, the big ugly bill is set to strip millions of people of their health care. It is set to roll back on all sorts of benefits that lift this country up. Why is unclear yet again. And it's expected to add roughly $2.8 trillion to our deficit. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things in the big ugly bill. A lot of things that hurt a lot of people. And we could just sit here and complain about a lot of it. But Republicans don't want you to do that. Because they don't think that they think the more that we don't talk about this, the better it is. Now, the fact is that the bill does actually increase the deficit, despite the fact that most Republicans are all about cutting that deficit. It adds $3 trillion. It's going to cut food benefits. It's going to cut all sorts of benefits for seniors. But the biggest one we've talked about a lot on this show is the cuts to health care. About 11 million people are projected, according to the Congressional Budget Office, to be removed from their Medicare coverage. So Republicans don't want to own up to that. They can't. I mean, I don't know what smart politician would want to own up to such a thing. But instead of even badgering around it, they are straight up just denying that that's happening. They're just denying that it's going to happen. And it's insane to think that they are doing this with a straight face. I mean, take a look at Speaker Mike Johnson, who is literally saying that people will not be taken off of Medicare.
You've got a number of provisions. We want to make sure that we hold by our commitment that we are not cutting Medicaid. The president has said that, and I've said that. We've all said that. We are strengthening the program for the people who are the most vulnerable populations who really rely upon that. You're talking about the disabled, the elderly, young pregnant women, for example.
So Republicans are doing that. It has been projected that 11 million people are going to be taken off of Medicare. So Mike Johnson can say whatever the heck he wants to say. Facts, we all have facts, and then we have feel facts. And I think that might be a feel fact, maybe Mike Johnson. I don't know. Now, Senate Republicans, you'd think that maybe after all of that backlash, they would try to, save face and maybe not brutally devastate millions of American families. But Senate Republicans are actually trying to hone on it even more. They want to make even more cuts. It's come to the point that some GOP House lawmakers are now writing letters to House leadership begging them not to make these cuts, because even they know that these cuts are going to be devastating. Senator Tom Tillis has already said that if Republicans pass these brutal Medicaid cuts, they're not going to win the midterms in 2026. I mean, I think that was already a pretty clear conclusion just based on the current guy in the White House, but this doesn't help. So Republicans are going to lose the midterms. That is the fear among a lot of Republicans. And the continued cuts and hurt that these people are going to put on millions of Americans only accelerates that fear. And don't take my word for it. Take the American people's word. According to a Fox News poll, 38% of Americans support the big ugly bill. Just 38%. 60% oppose, roughly 60% of Americans oppose the big ugly bill. And it's no surprise. When millions of people are being stripped of their health care, when millions of people are going to lose benefits that help them every day, when children are going to lose access to the food they get to eat, free lunches, I don't think most Americans are on board with such a thing. But Republicans would rather lie straight to your face and pretend that it's not happening and try to get away with it. That's how they do things. Here's another example of lying. So the reason we may not have been talking about the big ugly bill is because of everything that's been going on in the Middle East lately. As you know, on Saturday, President Trump greenlit orders to conduct airstrikes on Iran's nuclear program, on key sites in Iran, dropping 30,000-pound bombs on Iranian nuclear facilities. When they did that, and the whole world was on edge. Everyone was stressed out. Everyone was like, oh my gosh, not another war in the Middle East, like rightfully so. When they did that, they had to defend such a thing to the American people because, there was no immediate threat that was being flagged. I mean, Donald Trump's own director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who has her own credibility issues, said in her capacity as director of national intelligence that Iran was not currently pursuing building that bomb, that nuclear weapon. Yet, despite that, Donald Trump said straight up, I don't care what Tulsi Gabbard has to say. I don't care what my director of national intelligence has to say. And so only Donald Trump could put us in a position that somehow Tulsi Gabbard not being listened to becomes alarming. But that is where we are. So they conducted the airstrikes. And after that, Trump had to defend such a thing because everyone was nervous about going to war in the Middle East. So he said that they completely obliterated the Iranian nuclear program. Administration officials went everywhere saying such things. I mean, take a look at this montage of Trump administration officials saying that.
We are confident, yes, that Iran's nuclear sites were completely and totally obliterated.
That the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
Thanks to President Trump's bold and visionary leadership and his commitment to peace through strength, Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated.
U.S. strikes obliterated the Iranian nuclear program. Well, yesterday it was being reported that new intelligence reports from both the United States and Israel say that the Iranian nuclear program was actually just set back by months, not completely obliterated like they said. The intelligence suggests that uranium stockpiles and centrifuges are largely intact, and some were just taken out of the facility before the strikes were conducted. So, all in all, the obliteration that they claimed and went around saying, not true. That's not to say that the fighters that did that carried out this operation didn't do a good job. But this administration did lie to the American people when they went all and around saying that they did the job when they did not do the job. And so, in short, global tensions were inflamed. Everyone in this country was freaking out, all for their little PR stunt. I mean, at this point, because they didn't do much. And it's not clear exactly what they're going to do next. So Republican leaders lie. They lie a lot. And we've just gotten two really, really big examples of it. And you would feel like, understandably, a little defeated. You might feel like, wow, what do we have going for us now? What are we going to do? Well, the American people are not happy about what is going on in DC. They're not happy about the constant lying. They are not happy about being misled. And we're seeing it when people, in all the actions we see. Just a few days ago, 10 days ago, I guess, 11 days ago, on June 14th, which is Donald Trump's birthday, over 5 million Americans got to the streets to protest in over 2,000 cities across America in No Kings protests across the country. It was considered the biggest single-day American demonstration in recent history. So Donald Trump was sitting in Washington watching a birthday parade that he spent millions of dollars on, of taxpayer dollars on, while people are being stripped of their Medicaid at the same time. You know, he was watching this whole show, and millions of Americans were taking to the streets to protest him, to protest all that they are doing, whether it's attacking civil liberties, whether it's gaslighting us, whether it is doing deeply unpopular things like taking 11 million people off of their health care. The American people are using their voices to say no. And then last night, we also got some big news out of New York City. You might have seen Zohran Mamdani, the New York State Assemblyman who was just elected as the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York City. Now, normally this would have been just a sleeper election. Eric Adams is the incumbent, and he was the Democratic nominee 4 years ago, and I remember we covered it on the show. And traditionally, yes, this would have just been a sleeper election. Eric Adams would have. But Eric Adams, of course, had weird, creepy legal issues, bribery, a bunch of things that were being alleged with his relationship with the country of Turkey. And so Democrats said, we're not running you. Donald Trump, seeing a friend in shared experience, I guess, took him under his wing, and then Democrats said, no way, Jose, you are not coming with us. And Mayor Eric Adams kind of became a pariah in just politics in general. He's running as an independent. So Democrats had this opportunity to pick a new leader to be mayor of New York City. And in that race, Governor Andrew Cuomo, former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who was forced basically into resigning for inappropriate conduct 4 years ago when he was governor, decided that he could be mayor of New York City. He could run, that people would forget. People didn't forget. People didn't count out Zohran Mamdani. Last night, the results came in. A 33-year-old Democratic socialist defeated former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who has name recognition and is a legacy politician in New York. He defeated him in the New York City mayoral primary, garnering 44% of the vote to Cuomo's 36%. And Zohran Mamdani is not, all being straightly sworn in right now. It's a ranked choice voting election. So right now, in this election, the lowest vote getter, their totals will be, the lowest vote getter will get eliminated, their second choice will get reallocated, then third choice will get reallocated, and all of that will get reallocated until someone gets over 50%. And the way the math is looking right now, it seems more than obvious that Zohran Mamdani is going to win after however many rounds of ranked choice voting need to be put in place. And Andrew Cuomo recognized that. And so I say that because Democrats are looking for new leadership. They're looking for bold leadership. And Mamdani, I guess, offered some of that. He was listening to what some of the people were saying, were complaining about. And they rewarded him by making him the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York City, which in most cases means that he's on a straight ticket path to become the next mayor of New York City. So we have a lively opposition. We have people speaking up, speaking out, and using their votes to speak out against Republicans. Senator Thom Tillis is worried about losing the 2026 midterms. I think he's right. I don't think that it's savable at this point. I think a lot of the things that they want to do or have done have already been damaging enough. But there are some, I guess, who are cautious. Anyway, that is what we have for today. My interview with Maria Peterson is right after. So stick around, go watch that, and we'll see you in the next one. So we like to take a local politics look here on the Ishan S Show. And as you know, I am from the northwest suburbs of Chicago, in Illinois. And so I've had the privilege of interviewing a lot of candidates. And my guest for today's episode is actually a returning guest who we had on just a few years ago to talk about when she was running back then as well. Today, we are joined by Maria Peterson, who is running in the 52nd District to oust incumbent Marty McLaughlin, or whoever the Republicans decide to put up, because there's some awkward stuff going on their side. But to talk about her run, the headlines, and a lot more, it is my honor to be joined by candidate for Illinois' 52nd District, Maria Peterson. Maria, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ishan, for inviting me to be on your show. I really appreciate it.
Of course. So before we get into our interview today, why don't you take a couple moments to introduce yourself to my audience?
Sure, thank you. Well, I'm Maria Peterson. I have lived in the Barrington area since almost, goodness, we're going to have an anniversary. July of 1996 is when my husband and I and our three sons moved out here from Chicago. We lived on the northwest side. We outgrew our home in Chicago, and we moved out here because of the excellent school district that Barrington 220 offers. And at the time I was, when we first moved out here, I did get involved with the school referendums for Barrington 220. I was watching how at the time they would do a lot of the outreach for trying to get the referendums passed through then the Barrington Courier and mailing. And I finally, and they kept losing. And then I finally went to a meeting and I go, may I ask who the person in charge is for these referendums? I would like to help out and see that these referendums actually get passed. And so that's my beginning work in the Barrington area was I showed them how to knock on doors and how to reach voters. And at that time, we passed, it was in the early 2000s, we passed one of the largest referendums, which is when North Barrington countryside schools were rebuilt. An addition was built to the middle schools because at the time my oldest was going to Prairie and was doing classrooms in mobile units. And there was also Barbara B. Rose that was built. And I believe there were also an addition occurred at the high school as well. So I've always been community oriented. Even in Chicago, I was community oriented. But out here in the Barrington area, it started with the referendums. And then little by little, I started getting involved with more activities. Eventually, I became the president of our Barrington Rotary Club. I volunteer with Citizens for Conservation. I am currently the vice chair of the Lake County Zoning Board of Appeals and a board member of the Illinois Stewardship Alliance, because I really believe in supporting small farms. One, because it continues to protect our environment by having small farms, but it's also trying to encourage and educate our local community that local grown food is better for us. Not only is it healthier for us, but it's also healthy for the environment. And we are helping our local farmers stay in business. And then I recently was appointed on the Northwest Council Leadership Council for Wings, because I do believe in protecting women and their family from domestic violence. So there's a lot. And I'm happy to share more as we get into questions.
Well, I mean, yeah, like you said, quite the resume. So before we talk about some of the more nitty-gritty of this race, the last time we had you on the show, we were just a few weeks before the Supreme Court made their Dobbs decision, which stripped millions of women of their fundamental constitutional freedom. Yesterday marked 3 years of that decision. So before we talk about some of the more nitty-gritty of this race, I just wanted to get your thoughts just on the 3-year anniversary, and perhaps you can underscore why it's important that people in Illinois also care about it. Even if we might seem like a safe haven for reproductive freedom in this area, why should voters still care about furthering that effort in this state?
Well, it seems, especially now with the Trump administration, that women's rights continuously get attacked, that women in general continue to be attacked. And why that is beyond me, because women run households. Women are the foundation of families. And so the attack on women just does not make sense. But let's go back to 3 years ago when Roe v. Wade was taken down. And even before that, back in 2019, I went down with Illinois Planned Parenthood to lobby our legislature to pass the Reproductive Health Care Act to ensure, to take the trigger law off the books, that should Roe v. Wade be overturned, that trigger would no longer exist, so that the right to reproductive health care and abortion was protected through Illinois law. And so it was a significant move to protect women's rights here in Illinois. And on the actual day that the Supreme Court decision was leaked and then decided, I remember when I was running for the Senate, that day I was walking and knocking on doors in Palatine. And the very first door I knocked on that afternoon was a woman who was probably in her 50s. And it was she had a strong Republican score. But I was like, you know what? I am here knocking on doors to meet voters and learn what they're concerned about. She asked me, I knocked on the door, I introduced myself, and she asked me where my stance was on abortion. And I said, I'm pro-choice. And she goes, good. She goes, I am a strong Republican, but after what the Supreme Court did to us today, and I have daughters, I will never vote for a Republican again because of what they just did to us. And she goes, you have my vote. So through and through, I am. Some people are calling, have called me woke for being so supportive of women's rights and choice. I'm sorry, but these people also have women in their lives, and these women have the independent right and the independent choice to make on how they're going to take care of themselves.
You know, I don't remember who exactly said it, but I remember hearing the quote when someone said, being woke just means to give a damn about other people. And I think that's just the point. Like, we are in a time in our country where rights are being taken away. We are constantly worried about more rights being taken away. It started with Roe v. Wade in this latest wave of rights being taken away. It started with Roe v. Wade. It's not going to stop anytime soon. So, I mean, that story of the house you knocked on, very powerful. So let's move a bit more to your race now. So last time you did run in for this seat in 2024, you came within just 47 votes, which is pretty remarkable just because we had an incumbent Republican in that seat. And you are going for another round at that seat. So what are you going to do differently this time? What do you think you would need to shift in this election specifically that maybe you might have missed out on in 24 to earn those 47 votes?
I think, well, clearly we'll continue to knock on doors. The community knows me from corner to corner, northwest, east, south, kitty corner, and the community knows me. But continuing to re-engage with the voters and meet new voters, and also, having a strong message and letting people feel who I am, that I am my same authentic self that I was when I ran for the Senate in 2022, the same person who I was when I ran in 2024, and the same person today. Here we are, 2025, but that I will be that same person advocating for families who are working hard, who are having a really hard time making ends meet, that are paying ridiculously high prices on their real estate taxes, that they're getting no relief, and that there are ways to help them, and and somebody's got to champion it, and somebody's got to step out into the arena, and I have done that when I worked for the U.S. Department of Labor and I was representing coal miners, litigating their cases to ensure that they receive their black lung benefits from these very powerful coal mining companies and their attorneys, I wasn't afraid to sit at the table with those people to litigate on behalf of the coal miners who had given their lives to these coal mining companies, and now the coal mining companies basically wanted to screw them over because they didn't want to pay the benefits. So that's who I am. I'm not one to, leapfrog from one position to another. I have worked my way through the process so that people can feel my authenticity, know who I am, know that I'm in their corner, know that from my own background, when my parents were starting out as Mexican American immigrants, that they started with nothing also. That their apartment, their bed was, from what my mother had told me, their first bed was a wool carpet. And, eventually they had enough money, they worked, and they built enough a nest egg to buy a car and then buy their first home. We lived in that home until my dad sold that house just before my mother passed away because he couldn't take care of the house and her at the same time. So that was in 1993. But it was at that time, people just had one house. They didn't move from house to house to house like we do today. And now we're kind of going backwards to that, where people can't even afford a house because the costs are so high. So I kind of diverged there, but
this would not be an Ishan Show interview if we did not talk about the headlines. There is a lot to choose from. But in today's episode, we talked a little bit about the big ugly bill that Trump and Republicans are really trying to put through. I mean, we've talked about a lot of the adverse effects of it, where the environmental hurt that we're going to see, the effects on food benefits, 11 million people being stripped of their Medicare, even though Republicans are looking in the camera saying that people will not lose Medicare. There's just a lot. What do you think? How do you think that's going to hurt Illinois families, particularly in your district? Because it undoubtedly will. It's just, I think a lot of people just don't know what that may look like because Republicans have not been very transparent about that.
yeah, well, there there's a lot to unload there. Let's just start first with children. Children and disabled individuals, once the SNAP benefits are taken away, children are going to lose the opportunity for free lunch, for free breakfast. Individuals that depend on SNAP that are disabled. I deliver Meals on Wheels almost every month, once a month, on behalf of our Rotary Club. Those individuals will lose Meals on Wheels. So a lot of people of all ages across the board, are going to get impacted. Then let's talk about Medicaid and Medicare. Yes, it's a friend of mine, actually the husband and wife, we renovated our home during COVID because what else was there to do during COVID? So we renovated our home, and my friend was the architect and she did the design work that we wanted. And about a year and a half after the work was starting, actually when it was done, let me clarify that. She was diagnosed with the beginnings of dementia. And her and her husband were actually featured in the front page of the New York Times a few weeks ago. Because what a loved one does is that a loved one goes out and tries to do everything and anything they can to ensure that their loved one gets the best possible help. We did that. We did the same thing when our son was deaf, when he was diagnosed deaf. We did what we could. But in their case, the treatment that they went for didn't work. And my friend, her husband's going to put her in assisted living next month. And it's going to cost them a significant amount of money per month. And there's the reality that he said that there is a reality that if she lives any longer than a specific time frame, that he's going to he's going to be really nervous about what's going to happen for his own future because of the retirement money that they had saved, that there may not be enough for him anymore. So what happens, right? And so, but they're one instance of thousands of cases of dementia and Parkinson's disease, put dementia under the umbrella of Alzheimer's. But it was diagnosed, it was prognosed 2 years ago that within the decade we were going to have a crisis of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Well, now we're 2 years into it. So we have 8 years, and every day you see people suffering from those debilitating, deathly diseases. So we're not ready. And now that they're taking benefits, the federal government's taking benefits away, the state can only do so much. So we have to come together at the table and figure out how we're going to do this, because it's a lot of work to take care of somebody who's sick, who's ill. It's a lot of work to raise a child.
Yeah.
People underestimate mothers in the work it is that take to raise a child and to raise more than one. And then in our case, we raised the middle one who was deaf, so we had to go out for extra services. So it's a lot, and people are gonna suffer. And then I just want to address the environment. So we have a critical need to make sure that our water remains clean, safe drinking water. And 2 years ago, when the Supreme Court decided that factories could dump into water that was non-contiguous on the surface, they forget that water is all connected underneath the surface. It's all connected. And so if you pollute in this little pond that doesn't connect visually on the surface, you're still polluting. You're still creating an environmental hazard, polluting the water, hurting the fauna and the foliage. And we have to do better. And thankfully, we have the Illinois Environmental Council here in Illinois, and Sierra Club, and a bunch of smaller groups that have come to the table when we've had zoning board of appeals cases that are going to affect creeks. We've had some of those smaller environmental groups come and give public comment to projects that some companies want to do where they would be polluting our creeks and waterways here in Lake County. So very critical to protect those.
It's stories like the ones you share that I think we have to be amplifying, because either the folks making these decisions don't know, or they're putting their head in the sand. I don't know which one it is. I couldn't hope for either one, but these are going to have adverse effects, like you said, on millions of families. And we could talk about all of that endlessly, but I mean, we'll save that conversation for another day as well, because I know there's more to talk about. But I also want to talk about some of the work you want to do as well if you are elected as a state representative, like some of the affirmative action. I mean, we talk about a lot of the work of defending against the Trump administration, but I also want to talk about some of the policies that you hope to put in place, fight for, and actually get through. Are there any key policy priorities that you have in mind, like right now, that you would want to be a leader on or a champion for in Springfield if you are elected, that we don't have yet in Illinois?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is affordable housing. When we first started, that there are individuals that could barely own a home. There are individuals that can't even buy a home. And then we have younger people moving back home because they can't even afford their apartments anymore, because even apartments, and part of that problem is that these the name is escaping me, but these conglomerates that are buying up homes, and the same thing with apartments, and the same thing with nursing homes, they're snatching them all up, and then they're run on such a tight shoestring. So for nursing homes, they got price gouging for services, but terrible services. And then homes, they're buying up all these homes, and then there's a monopoly, and there's these homes are priced out of most people's affordability. And then the same thing is happening true with apartments as well. So affordable housing, and then and if you put that as the umbrella and everything that falls underneath that, like home insurance, real estate taxes, the cost of utilities. I was a member of this, a board member of the Citizens Utility Board back in the early 1990s. And I used to go around the district and teach people how to read their electric bills. And so that they understood that you were getting charged for this, this, and this. Now you look at your Verizon bill or your cell bill, and you got all kinds of sneaky little charges. The same thing if for your cable bill, if you have that. There's all these. Everybody wants to put their finger in the pot to take a little bit of money. And it's like, oh, but it's only 20 cents. It's only $1. But how many dollars after how many bills are you getting? That by the end of the day, you barely have enough money to even like say, hey, I want a cup of coffee outside. I want to go treat myself to a cup of coffee. And even that's getting hard. So the umbrella of housing and everything that falls within that is critical for me. The umbrella of healthcare in terms of assuring that individuals with disabilities, that individuals that are suffering like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's are taken care of, and making sure our senior citizens are taken care of as well, because so many of them are taxed out of their home. They either have to go back home and live with their children, or they have to go into a home. And then so where's their quality of life? And this is where people forget what government is for. Government isn't there to run private programs. Government is there to help people where they cannot help themselves, right? Nobody's going to go out and pave Route 12 on their own because it's going to help them. And I did that by pulling my bootstraps up, and I ripped the road up and I paved it and blah, blah, blah. No, that's a communal effort. That's government working together, collecting taxes to build a road that everybody can use so that you can go to work, so you could go to school, so you could go to the police station, go to the post office, take your family to a movie. People need to remember that taxes are not a terrible thing. Taxes are there to build community. So those are my two primary things that have the umbrellas that have many things underneath.
Absolutely. I mean, we have a pretty large college student base, and I can tell you, one of the biggest issues is housing affordability for college students. The whole thing about the conglomerates coming in and jacking up the prices, it's a big problem, and it needs to be addressed, and it's not really being looked at in the way it should be. So the perspective is definitely welcomed. So anyway, Maria, we are almost out of time. So before I do let you go, why don't you share some parting thoughts you might have with my audience, if you have any?
Well, if you live in District 52, which includes the villages of Libertyville, Mundelein, Volo, Lakemore, and that's on the Lake County side, Volo, Lakemore, Wakanda, Island Lake, Fox River Grove, and then when you hop over into the McHenry County side, you have Fox River Grove, Algonquin, and then you'll go into Barrington Hills, Barrington, South Barrington, let's see, I have a small portion of Inverness, and then we have North Barrington, Lake Barrington, Port Barrington, because Barringtons, there's several of them.
Oh.
And then we go, we have a little bit of a tiny portion of Long Grove in there, and I believe I did say Mundelein. So if you live in any of those areas, and it's geographically huge. It's a big, big district. And the homes vary everywhere from a tiny one-person home, literally, to McMansions. And then we have small farms, which I'm thrilled about. And we have several family, multifamily areas. So if you live in this area, I ask you for your vote. who you see today is who you'll see tomorrow. You'll see me delivering Meals on Wheels. You'll see me at CERT at an event in Wakanda. You may see me volunteering with the Citizens for Conservation. And you may see me at your doors. So I hope that we'll meet. And please, if you have any questions for me, you could go to my website, mariafor52.com. You could sign up for our newsletter. You can email me questions. You can volunteer and help us out. Let's get those 47 votes and then some so that we win in November of 2026 and we can tackle these issues together, because this is not a one-man show. This is not an I, this is an us. And so I look forward to serving for all of you in the state legislature, along with my 117 member peer, because it's 118 members in the state house. So together we can do good work.
All right, Maria Peterson, candidate for Illinois 52. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to have you back on very soon.
Thank you, Ishan. I'm so honored that you gave me the opportunity. Thank you.
All right, that was my interview with Maria Peterson, candidate for Illinois 52. If you liked my commentary, then please subscribe to the Ishan S Show here on YouTube. And if you like what I have to say and want to hear more from me, you can subscribe to my Substack. You can subscribe so that you get those newsletters that I talked about at the top of the show. And you can also follow us on social media. Follow the Ishan S Show on Instagram at the Ishan S Show. You can follow me at Real Ishan Shrivastava on Instagram. And on Blue Sky, you can find me at ishanshrivastava.bluesky.social. Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope to see you very, very soon. I'll see you in the next one.